Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution.
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 You want a revolution?
You say you want a revolution?
Revolution. The revolution.
It's going on right now.
Welcome to The Revolution, the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we ask today's most successful entrepreneurs to share the tools and strategies they use to build relationships and connections to grow their revenue. Now, your host for The Revolution, John Corcoran.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here, the host of this show. And each week I get to talk to really fascinating CEOs, founders, entrepreneurs, a range of companies. Go check out my archives. Check out recent interview with the co-founder of Netflix, YPO, EO, Activation Blizzard, Lending Tree, OpenTable. Lots of great interviews in the archives. I'm also the co-founder of Rise 25, where we help connect B2B business owners to their ideal prospects. And quick shout out before I get to today's guest, Ed Robinson. He's a Vistage coach in the Washington, Baltimore area. And really great guy who I interviewed in a past episode. So go check that out. But he first introduced me to today's guest. Her name is Kait LeDonne. She's the founder of Brandwise Media, which is a personal brand agency which builds executive and author personal brands using content marketing strategies through social media. She's also the author of the book, The Attraction Magnet: 7 Insider Secrets the world's biggest brands use to attract customers who can't wait to buy from them. She's regularly featured also in national and international publications and as a commentator on celebrity and corporate brands. But today, we're also going to be talking about growing a scaling business. And what's really interesting is she's grown and scaled really quickly after she had kind of a breaking point. So we're going to talk about that in a moment. But first, this is brought to you by Rise 25 Media, where, of course, we help B2B businesses to get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with done-for-you podcasts and content marketing. If you've ever been curious about starting a podcast, I've been doing one for 11 years. I tell everyone they should start a podcast because even if you're not the next Joe Rogan, you don't need to be. It's just such a great tool for having great conversations with people like Kait here today. So you can contact us at Rise 25 Media or email us at support@rise25media.com. All right, Kait, so take me back to this breaking point you had about 18 months ago. You had a very frank, very to the point conversation with someone who basically said to you, all right, it's time to put up or shut up. You had been basically a consultant for, I guess at that point, 4 or 5 years of being an entrepreneur. And you had to kind of face whether you want to keep on doing that or build an actual company. And it kind of lit a fire under you. So take us back to that point.
Yeah, thanks, John. And thanks for having me. You know, it was, like you said, about 18 months ago. I'll never forget where I was sitting. I was sitting in an armchair on a Zoom call with my accountant and my fractional CFO. We were reviewing my numbers and I thought they were quite good. I mean, I was living a nice lifestyle. I had just moved to New York and my accountant said, it's good, but you're great. And do you really want this? Or do you just want to be a highly paid consultant? Because I see so much more in you. And I think you could really build something, scale, exit if you want, or you can just kind of walk the comfortable path. But maybe you want to put on your big girl pants and build a big girl business. And of course, like every bit of me, the stubborn side, the feminist, everything, I was like, how dare you do it?
There's a man saying this?
Yeah, we have we're good friends.
Okay.
All right. No, he's not mansplaining me. I want to be clear.
Okay.
I don't even think he probably used the word big girl pants in my revisionist history. There's what he said and then what I heard based on my own self-talk. And I can almost guarantee Matt did not say that. And in my head, I was like, grow the F up and grow this business.
Yeah.
You know,
I love how you make it even harsher in your mind.
Totally. Don't we?
And then he backhanded me, and then he slapped me, and then he shook me by the shoulders.
Get it together. Everybody's probably like, "Oi, I would never want to work with him." Like, no, it's actually probably me just trying to like really lay on some comedic effect or something. But either way, he was really having a heart to heart with me, and I sat there for 3 days, and I really had this kind of introspective moment, probably the biggest one I had since leaving corporate and deciding I want to go start something for myself, where it was keep walking the path of least resistance, where you're a known kind of quantity and you know your comfort zone, or go out, hire, scale, create an agency. And at that point, I was feeling really lonely. Quarantine hadn't even started yet, if we look at this in the whole, timeline of things. And I just felt like I was sick of always having it be on me. And my capacity was always going to be limited by the number of hours in the day, even if I raised my rates, tenfold. So I decided I was going to do it. Like, it's go time. And in 18 months, we 4X'd. It was about me and like I'd say 0.5, like 2.5 people. They were kind of like halftime. And now we have a full agency of 11. And so it's been pretty quick.
Wow. And if you look back to some of the different pieces, obviously there's the branding side of things. You're a big advocate of using LinkedIn and different social media tools. So we could touch on that, but let's talk about the unsexy stuff. Let's talk about the stuff that a lot of entrepreneurs don't talk about, that involve operations and actually making scaling possible. What are some of the key pieces that you put in place that helped with this transformation?
I would say the first thing I did was bring on a COO. We're big fans of Traction by Gino Wickman and EOS. And his other book that I actually came to know him through before I was even familiar with Traction and the entrepreneur operating system was Rocket Fuel, in which he and his co-author posit that every great company kind of has this like visionary and then an operator, and you want to identify which one you are and kind of find that complement to it. And so I knew I was the person that's why I did so well on LinkedIn. I'm great at branding, the visioning, the marketing, basically all sales side of things. I enjoy it. I love it. I find fulfillment. Where I don't excel and was very quick to identify that it was going to be a hindrance was the operations, the details, the SOPs, the templatizing, all of those things that are really required if you're going to scale so much on the front end through sales and marketing to make sure quality, service, and standards are met on the back end. And so without a doubt, I think getting very, very clear about where I was really impactful and where I was not was number one. And then number two, I had joined the Entrepreneur Organization Accelerator program still as a consultant. And I remember sitting through their execution day when they talked about key performance indicators. And I had the good fortune of building under the Scaling Up and Gazelle's model and the EOS model more or less from day one. And so I think a lot of us entrepreneurs, certainly when I was in my former business model of consulting, you're trying to kind of look at that from retrospect and then implement systems after you've really scaled something. We were heavy on systems in the beginning because of my COO and because of those. So whatever it is, find a system, find a framework that will allow you to create those systems, because that's the only way you're going to support scale. And if you're not the one that's going to get that done and that doesn't get your juices flowing, find somebody who can partner with you in that, or else, in my experience and seeing other businesses, you'll implode. You don't have the right structure to support it.
And when you hired this COO, I'm curious, did you feel like, oh, I've got the revenues to support this, this will be totally fine? Or was it a bit of a leap of faith?
100% a leap of faith. I remember actually shouting Ed Robinson back out, the person who introduced you and I. We were talking one day and he said, Kate, you can't afford to make a bad hire. And at the time, I had this idea in my mind that I again, probably wouldn't have said this out loud because it sounds just negligent, but I was afraid I couldn't afford to make a good hire. But when you flip that and realize if you're really going to scale and go for it, you can't afford to make a bad hire. I realized that there's the right kind of like investment and debt and way to reach so you can build something greater than yourself. And then the things that maybe I wouldn't want to spend those on. And for me, overextending may not be the right verb, but like being able to reach and get the right people, I can always sell. I'm always going to be able to support that. But if I find somebody good and I'm like, it just makes me a little uncomfortable financially to hire them, I usually push myself to hire them And then I hustle like heck to get the sales.
Yeah. Motivates you further.
Absolutely. Yes.
And you bring this person on, this COO, and where do you take it from there? You haven't had a COO before. And I found in my business that one of the hardest types of roles to hire for are ones where you haven't hired for before. Once you have hired in that role before, then you got a roadmap, and you can even have the previous people train them, and it becomes a way easier. But COO is that's a big role. So you're basically imparting a lot of what you did on what that person would do. So talk a little bit about that.
Yes and no. So Pam is her name, my COO. We had been together for a few years, and she was my virtual assistant. And I think she was really looking for a lifestyle business after successfully running a lot of companies and having other work. And so she was ready to go get freedom in her life and started a virtual assisting business. And very quickly, I was like, her criteria and credentials far outweigh a VA. I mean, she is a systems and operations machine. I've never seen anything like it. And so after I had that conversation with my accountant and I got motivated, we sat down and I said, Pam, I think I'm going to go for this. Do you want to do it? And she said, yes. And we built it together with the agreement. Okay, I'm going to focus on sales and marketing. You're going to focus on ops and systems. And we helped actually write each other's job description for each other. And so it's funny because I not only wrote the COO one, she wrote mine as the CEO, which helped me also shift my mindset out of where I was sometimes getting my hands into things I shouldn't have been involved in. I could come back to it and say, well, this is what she expects of me as a CEO, which was, interestingly, very empowering.
Right. Talk about some of the other roles you've hired for, because you've hired a bunch of roles over the last year, and particularly how you found good quality people for other roles where you didn't have them already working for you.
So much of how I found just rock star people was tapping into virtual assisting groups and then finding if I will be dead honest, very qualified mothers who wanted more flexibility in their life. And I think it's really important to say that at this juncture, because we're talking about a year coming out of quarantine and the pink collar recession where, kids being home at school and trying to juggle that and work. We've seen a lot of women exit the workplace because maybe a traditional working schedule or parameters hasn't really empowered them perhaps to have a traditional job. But for me, I was like, if I'm going to hire somebody, there's two types of people that I've, in my experience, seen are better than anybody at getting things done. Moms and veterans, because they're both used to commanding troops of people that sometimes don't want to do what you want them to do. And so we would dive into
and there are explosive messes everywhere all around them.
That's right, exactly. Yeah. So we would dive into these mom communities and say, we're willing to provide flexibility. Before COVID hit, we were already going to scale remotely. It enabled me to find pockets of really great talent that wasn't limited by a geographic distance or market demands. And so we would reach into these communities. And the first hire we made was a personal brand strategist. Her name was Helen, and she's actually now our director of client services. And then we hired other personal brand strategists and then account managers for project management and client interfacing and communication. So I would say those were the primary hires we made in the beginning to start scaling up the organization. But I'll say it for those in the back, you want to get somebody who's going to get stuff done. A working parent, you're not going to go wrong. Offer them flexibility. They can do in 30 hours what I've seen other people struggle to get done in 60.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. A lot of our team is working moms for sure that are looking for some flexibility, especially now. There are a lot of women that, few roles we hired for, and these applications coming in were a little bit heartbreaking because so many moms who had to quit their job a year ago in February, March of 2020 to stay home with their kids, and then were coming back into the workforce and maybe couldn't do what they were doing before because they didn't know what we didn't know what the world's going to look like, and looking for greater flexibility, and some really amazingly talented women and moms out there. So I agree. What about upgrading systems over the last year? Systems, software, stuff like that. Have you experienced where you just realized this is not going to work for us anymore? We've bootstrapped this together. It's held together with duct tape, and we need to, a lot of effort can go into the old system and then into developing a new one.
That is another one where I am so happy that the first person was the COO, because she was a project management certified whiz. And in what I realized was you can have all the fanciest tools, whether you're doing Monday.com, ClickUp, Teamwork, it's still relying upon having those typed out SOPs where your team knows how to utilize those tools and what is being utilized in those tools. Personally, we switched over to teamwork.com. Teamwork fuels a lot of creative agencies. They really get that business model. And they also, shout out to Teamwork, I swear they're not paying me to say this, they just released what they call Instant Agency, which is basically their EOS system, the Entrepreneur Operating System for agencies to scale. And so they really anticipate what it is we need, not only from a client service standpoint, but an operations standpoint. And then from an executive standpoint of, okay, we want to run this like a well-oiled machine. And that's not just limited to project management. But yes, I would say Teamwork, Zoom, and the whole Google Workspace, because we're remote, we could not survive without those three tools. And then of course, like some instant messaging feature, we were using Slack when we signed on to Teamwork. That provides its own kind of Slack channel that's tied into projects, so it works for us. But you'll want to, in my experience is that you'll want to invest in project management and good tools to help you scale again before you're ready for it, because it's easier to build it as you go than try and retrofit a bunch of bad habits that have accumulated over time in a tidy template.
Yeah, for sure. And we use Teamwork for our customer support software for our unified inbox clients emailing us. And it's amazing. It allows you to create all these different inboxes that different people manage, and it filters automatically. So it's really cool. What about
that Teamwork desk feature is like, it's chef's kiss, but I think the one you're talking about, it's great. It really helps streamline communication.
What about, we were talking about upgrading systems. What about upgrading yourself? I know you said you actively participate in the EO Accelerator program, which is a tremendous program that I participated in as well and recommend to a lot of different entrepreneurs. But what sorts of ways have you had to upgrade your own skills and capabilities over the last 18 months?
I think when I was a consultant, it felt like I still had a job and that my bosses were just my clients. And so I was still in that employee mindset for about 4.5 years. When I decided to scale an agency, I realized that the people I needed to focus on making happy, empowering, and building up was the team. Because if they're happy, they're fulfilled, and they're doing great work, our clients are happy, fulfilled, and experiencing the results of that great work. And so it's really been this shift of giving myself permission to fight the urge to jump into maybe the latest client fire, depending on severity, of course, and block off my calendar and review financials and look at utilization for the team, and then research and invest in training programs for them. Sometimes I feel guilty because I'm so used to, or was so used to being on the front line of client accounts, like, oh, this isn't where I should be focusing. But for me, I really had to break out of that and realize, no, your role is that of a leader now. You need to train, empower, look for resources to help others do that. And one of the things my accountant, also an analogy I thought was just brilliant, he said to me one time was, it would be like coaching a soccer team of, 12-year-olds and then running on the field and pushing them aside and saying, you're doing it wrong. Let me just kick the ball down the field, versus focusing on what is the right practice and drills and post-game recaps that I can use to help them realize their potential. It's quite a different mind shift, and one that I've really had to work at.
And yelling at those 12-year-olds to put on their big girl pants at the same
That's
time.
right. Put on your big girl pants.
Yeah, I love that. It's interesting. I think, as you go along, as you're scaling up an entity, in month one, it might be you're doing 90% of your time is spent on fulfillment. And then month 2, it's 80. And then month 3, it maybe at a different pace, but you're gradually getting out of that fulfillment and into the oversight, but it might also backslide a little bit at different points in time. So for you, how do you now determine how much you should be in fulfillment, and what is the highest and best use of your time? When are the times that you step in and you are in client services?
Sure. So absolutely sales and marketing, the highest and best use. I know that nobody can sell my business like me. I also know that there'll come a point, the next learning or the next growth plateau, where I won't be able to scale unless I bring on a salesperson, right? Like there's every milestone I fully expect. I've heard about the 3 million mark. That's when, if it's just you, you're not going to hit the point of growing beyond that unless you bring on somebody to do sales. But as of this point, sales and marketing is still a core focus. So heavy on the client onboarding, introducing and empowering the team. And then of course, if there is a major process breakdown, I jump in on that. I make sure that they know they have the full support and weight of the team and the founder to help. Fortunately, that doesn't happen a whole heck of a lot. And one of the things that's really helped is now having a director of client services in the agency who can even step in and empower our personal brand strategist with those items. Another thing I heard from a peer was that on a quarterly basis, they do check-ins with every one of their accounts as a CEO, just to say, hey, I'm here. Like, just because I'm not in the day-to-day doesn't mean I'm not watching your account. How's the experience gone for you? Unless in the case that the client may be more comfortable talking to them about it than someone else. So that's pretty much where I'm at in terms of account management these days.
Got it. And then let's talk about KPIs. So hard to determine those key performance indicators, key progress indicators, whatever it stands for. But it's those numbers that you and metrics that you pay attention to as a business owner. How have you gone about determining what you should be monitoring?
A lot of research and a lot of asking. For a digital agency, which is at the end of the day what we are, it's different than if we were, making toothbrushes or widgets or something. Utilization per employee, how many billable hours out of total hours are they working? That's a big one, right? Are the hours that they're contributing, is that actually growing revenue for the company? Cash flow, AR over 30, accounts receivables over 30. What percentage of our invoices still need to be collected over a 30 that are, beyond the 30-day window? Things like new revenue weekly leads in the pipeline, on-time project percentage. So overall, are we meeting on-time projects? And then we actually have one for client KPI success. So of the KPIs we've committed to for clients, how many of those are being met and exceeded out of all of our clients? So I think the thing is, you're going to find KPIs, as I understand and have been explained to by many a brilliant entrepreneur operating system implementer, is if you are on a beach somewhere and you are taking a vacation and somebody handed you a piece of paper with numbers on it, which numbers would you need to look at to know your business is doing well without you? And when you work backwards from that metaphor, you will generally see, okay, well, I know it'll be great if client satisfaction rate is at a 95%, if we're bringing in this amount of new revenue weekly, if employee satisfaction is at this, and if my employees are utilizing this amount of their time. For me, it really helped to picture that. I'm on vacation, I'm away for 2 weeks. The only thing I have to determine if the business is running well or not is a set of numbers. What are those key numbers for my company?
Yeah, it's a great way of viewing it. Let's talk also about building a culture. As you build a team, then it's going to take on a culture, whether you like it or not. What are some things that you've been aware of as you've thought about that particular piece for your company?
This is another one where I was very fortunate to build this from the ground up and not try and retrofit it. They hammer home the importance of values in your organization in both the Entrepreneur Organization Accelerator Program and in the Entrepreneur Operating System. And many of my friends are in the business of helping organizations figure out what their core values are. So before I even had a team, I did a lot of core value exercise for myself, like what really drives me as an entrepreneur. And so we came up with 6 of them. It's I love to learn, growth is super important, excellence, radical accountability, freedom, joy, and community. And so by getting very clear about that, we've been able to hire people that share those same core values. And when I look at the team, I think, wow, these are all people who are highly intrinsically motivated. They're team players. They're kind and they enjoy their work, and they're exceptionally accountable, not playing the blame game, but hey, I missed this and this is what I'm doing to improve it. And so it has been interwoven in the fabric of the organization before we started hiring. And we spend more time interviewing people about their core values and how much it aligns with ours than we do about skills and experience. That is usually evident on the resume. Of course, we're going to ask specific questions about that. But to a degree, you can teach that. You can't teach somebody the values that drive them. So that has been paramount, absolutely paramount in building a culture. And every day we have a daily huddle. We do a core value shout. Every Monday we have an organizational meeting and we read off the core values like we would the Pledge of Allegiance.
I love that. That's great. All right, we're almost out of time. So I want to ask one last question. I'm a big fan of gratitude personally. And so, you, Kait, as you look around at your peers and contemporaries, however you want to define that, who is out there that you respect, you admire the work that you're doing? You just want to give them a shout out for the work that they're doing.
So the person who was most instrumental in me becoming an entrepreneur was actually a long lost second cousin of mine. We had re-met through networking. She was a venture capitalist and then started her third act in owning cannabis dispensaries. And she was just this woman who, she grew up in West Virginia. Her parents had no ambitions of her going to college. And she completely bootstrapped, made her way as an engineer in Oracle and then a VC, and then a really like a cannabis conglomerate, many, many businesses, and then actually came up with, bought and sold a few other businesses in between. She was self-made in every way. And there is this thing about mentors where they say it's really important to have role models that look like you. And before that, I would say, a lot of my role, I just didn't have a lot of women who I knew. I certainly had like the Sarah Blakeleys who I idolized, like those celebrity entrepreneurs, but maybe not as many that I personally knew before I got reacquainted with her that looked at me and said, if I can do this coming from a poor coal mining town in West Virginia, you can too, and sent the elevator back down to me. And it was through helping her brand her first cannabis dispensary, find a book publisher and publish her book that I even got into personal branding because we were able to put her personal brand together and get her on the Today Show. And she said, you need to go build this for other people like you did for me. So without a doubt, Gina Dubé, who is the founder of Greenhouse Wellness, Blasiva, and a few other cannabis companies now, and formerly the founder of a lot of other companies that she had exited, was the catalyst for me saying, I can do this too. I really can do this too. Not to mention she's just making waves in that space. And we always laughed that she spent the greater part of our lives telling my cousins not to touch the stuff. And now, sells cannabis for a living, which is always a fun family laugh as my dad and all of my brothers and cousins are in law enforcement of some kind. It makes for interesting family.
And I'm imagining family reunions are a lot more fun as well. So that's right. Good. That's good. Kait,
everybody's a lot more relaxed now. She brings party favors. Everybody's very even keeled.
That can be helpful for certain family reunions for sure. Well, Kait, this has been great. Where can people go to connect with you and learn more about you and Brandwise?
Definitely. Brandwisemedia.com. And very active on LinkedIn, the most active of any social platform. You can always drop me a line there. Kait LeDonne, spelled like it is in the show notes.
KaitLeDonne, correct? Got it. Good. All right, Kait, thanks so much.
Thanks, John.
Thank you for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast with John Corcoran. Find out more at smartbusinessrevolution.com. And while you're there, sign up for our email list and join the revolution.
Revolution.
And be listening for the next episode of the Smart Business Revolution podcast.